Hello, everyone. That was Liam's monkey impression.
That was unfortunate timing. You did this, so I was copying that, and then you started
Yeah,
talking.
whatever you say. Yeah, sure. I'm just not. I'm just gonna leave it all in, but I'm gonna cut mine out, and you're gonna look like an
I
idiot.
mean, technically, aren't we all just monkey impressions? That's
Oh,
evolution, baby.
you're not wrong.
On today's Theory of Evolution podcast, we are going to be discussing.
If this is the first video of ours you've ever seen, you might be slightly confused. This is actually a Doctor Who show called Shouting into the Void, where we discuss episodes of Doctor Who. Surprisingly. Specifically New Who, and today, specifically, episode 11, Boomtown.
Yes.
In this episode, TARDIS team, Captain Jack, Rose, and the Doctor have to basically refuel in Cardiff. Sort of like a bottle episode. It's based in the city. It's not a big. Well, I say it's not a big world is at risk. The world is at risk, but it's not your like cliche action-packed episode. It's definitely more of a character piece, I think. So what did you think overall?
It's so good. It's oddly like how dark and deep it can get. I feel like it's a very comfortable watch, and it's like a comfort episode that I could just like any time of day. When I'm feeling in the mood for Doctor Who, Boomtown will often be one I like turn to and be like, yeah, I'll put that on. But yeah, it's really great fun. I think all the main actors in it are really great. It's cool to see the chemistry between them all. Revisiting a lot of ideas and themes and monsters from previous stories in this season, and a bit of setup for the finale as well. Very cleverly done. And yeah, I feel like its placement in the series is really good and just a lot of fun. And I feel like this is the justice the Selena's villains deserved, because there's only like 2 fart jokes and then they move on.
Yeah, and they're right at the start, basically, as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think if you were to just show someone an episode of Doctor Who and they've never seen it before, I reckon this would be a very good episode to show them. You really don't need to know anything previously, because I'm pretty sure it basically all gets explained. Even the TARDIS gets explained as to what it does and how it is what it is and what they all do.
Yeah.
So this is basically a clean way for somebody to jump on. And it's kind of the start of the finale as well, I feel. I know that the show in future series does more 3-part finales. I think this is sort of the first one, although it's not a specific part 1 of 3. It definitely sets up some things, puts the characters where they need to be, and adds in some sort of much needed context, I think, for the finale, which we'll come on to in the next couple of weeks. But this episode is my favorite. Like,
just you've been waiting for this one ever since we started this.
I mean, I know it's series 1. It's episode 11 of series 1. So, I mean, for me, it's just like Christopher Eccleston is not my favorite Doctor. It's David Tennant for me. So it never makes sense that this should be my favorite episode, but I just love everything about it pretty much. I have some worst bits that I scraped together to put some, but they are very much nitpicky.
Yeah.
2 are kind of the same, but they're definitely all nitpicky. But I guess before I gush about it anymore, we do 3 best bits ish and 3 worst bits ish. So we'll start with your first best bit.
The core group of Dr. Rose, Jack, and Mickey. Obviously, it's the second half of the episode that kind of split up a bit, but just the dynamic of the 4 of them for like the first half, and then like hunting down Margaret, just having fun. It just works so well. And I don't know if a group of characters has ever been so well matched before, and like potentially again. I just think they clearly get on so well. The chemistry is just clearly there. I could have just watched them for 40 minutes in that restaurant just having a laugh, and it had been like one of my favorite episodes probably. It's just so good. And I think this episode is such a good balance of comedic moments and some more serious stuff. And I feel like that group of 4 really sell that balance really well with their performances. So yeah, I just love the chemistry between those 4.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it last week, didn't we, with Jack sort of boarding the TARDIS, and you can already see that there's a good dynamic there. And you even see that right at the start when Mickey first arrives at the TARDIS. You see how Jack's sort of infusion of banter has already changed the dynamic of all three of them, and Mickey
Yeah.
just gets swamped by it straight away. You know, there's never a moment where Mickey is made to feel like he's an outsider to this group. He's very much welcomed basically straight away. Even if Captain Jack does open the door and he's like, "What do you want?" But like,
who the hell are you?
you wouldn't have had that. Wouldn't have, you know, if you take Jack out of it, it would have just been a boring introduction scene where Mickey's like, "Oh, hi guys," and then, you know, there wouldn't have been that character. But I think, yeah, you see it when Jack, Nine, and Rose are explaining why they're in Cardiff. You see it when they're chasing down Margaret at the at the at the hall, the city hall, I guess. Yeah, this is my favourite TARDIS scene. We haven't had, well, other than recently with 13, we haven't had this full of a TARDIS team, I don't think. You know, even though Mickey's only in it for one episode, we often only get two companions alongside the Doctor, with Amy and Rory being one of them. But especially with Russell T Davies, it's only really one companion that goes with the Doctor. Occasionally one drops in and out for an episode. But, you know, we don't see this kind of dynamic again. Even with, you know, Yaz, Graham, Ryan, and 13, I still don't think it's this level. I think this is the prime TARDIS team that every TARDIS team is aiming for, really. In New Who, I admit, I haven't seen much of Classic Who. At least none with a full companion team like this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the first Doctor, Susan, Ian, and Barbara are pretty damn good, but also Susan's a bit annoying. So yeah, I probably agree with this one being better.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. I guess we'll stick with the TARDIS team for the minute. And the sort of chase scene at the City Hall is my next best, because my first one was the TARDIS. I love it. I love all of it from the minute they walk in and Jack's like, "Here's the plan," and rattles it off. And then the Doctor's like, "Who's in charge?"
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, it's a good plan, so we can do what he says. And then the scene where they all flip up like their phones and get each other on speed dial. And then even when Nine walks up, he's like, "Oh, I'm here to see the mayor."
And you just hear the teacup drop.
So, oh, she's jumping out the window, isn't she? Yes, she is.
Leave the mayor alone.
Yeah.
Oh, best line of dialogue.
Just that whole sequence.
Margaret.
Yeah. See, that I'm going to come on to that in a nitpick, because it throws me out every time. But that whole sequence, and just you see how coordinated Jack, Nine, and Rose are, and you see how hard Mickey is trying. Like when there's like Sladine on the move, he's like, "Oh God!" And he like runs into the bucket, and he's trying to get out. And I don't know. It's just it's comedy, but it's not like, it's slapstick comedy, but it's not cringy slapstick comedy. Like, you believe it could happen.
Yeah, somehow it does work.
Yeah, and even when
incredibly,
even when they're like, she's teleporting to try and get away, and the Doctor's just like keeps bringing her back, and she just gets closer and closer, and she's like, "Oh, what have I done to you?" And he's like, "Well, you tried to kill everyone."
Apart from that,
it's just, again, like, if you wanted an intro into Doctor Who, this whole sequence basically just sums it up. It's running through corridors trying to stop an alien.
Yeah, because
with some comedy and, you know, drama.
Yeah, like before or since that scene, like the Doctor's rubbish with teleports again. And he, like, when Daleks teleport away, he could just go to that. But this scene, they just go so ham with it and commit to it so fully. I really don't care, because it works so well, and it's just such a funny scene.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue that maybe Margaret's teleport, because it's a short range one, isn't it? It's just sort of get her away. You could argue that maybe her teleport's so like primitive as teleports can be, that the Doctor can easily just reverse it.
Yeah.
But even so, like, it shows that the Doctor can do all this tech stuff just with his sonic screwdriver. But yeah, I love that scene. That whole sequence is just peak Doctor Who for myself. What's your next best bit?
Annette Badland as Margaret / Blonde Felfoch. I think she's fantastic. I can see why Russell T Davies chose to bring her back after seeing her performance in the original two-parter. Like I already said, I think this is the Celine properly done justice, because they get the fart jokes out of the way very quickly, and then she's just fine for the rest of it. And she's sinister. She can like toy with everyone in the TARDIS team. She has this plan in the background, and she has like plan Bs and all sorts going on. You know, they try to do something a bit different as well with the character, with her kind of getting used to her human life, the potential of her, wanting to be redeemed. Does she not? I have a few issues with how they executed that, but I'll get onto that. And even like the sillier moments, like "Buckle up, boys, surfs up," has the potential to be the cringiest line in Doctor Who history. Somehow she just about sells it and makes it work. So yeah, I enjoyed that. And just the idea of bringing the character back later on in the series sets up a really interesting argument about, how much of a right do we have to be like the executioners of these people? And yeah, I really enjoyed what she brought to the character this time.
Yeah, like there's a real risk that bringing this character back could be seen as lazy and out of ideas already, and there's no way, they just needed a cheap option, which I think to some extent is what it is, but it's done in a good enough way that doesn't make you realize that. And yeah, just how you saw bits of it in the two-parter when she faced off with the Doctor before, but you do see more of a fact that although every week we see these aliens and we see them trying to destroy the world, you see the individual rather than the alien menace. Even if she is trying to manipulate the Doctor into sort of letting her go, there's still that thought that maybe she's turned good, because we do see that set up when she spares the reporter earlier on.
Yeah.
Although right before that she did decapitate another guy. So
yeah, that's kind of my issues with it. But
this is very much a case of, was the Dalek trying to manipulate Rose, or was it evil all along? I think it's very much that with Margaret as well. Is it trying to manipulate the Doctor, or is it evil all along? But yeah, she's a very good actress in this. Probably never going to come back, because there's no way you can get her back in that role unless the Doctor dropped the skin suit off with the egg.
Yeah, I mean, she was supposed to have a cameo in Stolen Earth, wasn't she?
Yeah,
her voice, and she even recorded the line, but they had to cut that sequence for budget. They even got her in to record it.
See, you just put it in when you could. Why didn't they use that in the End of Time when you see the Slovene?
Oh yeah, that's true.
I don't know, but yeah, I agree. And one of my main scenes, or a couple of my scenes that were top for me, were scenes involving her. The one at the dinner scene's good. And in the TARDIS, when she's like, "How many of you will be able to look into my eyes as you take me to my death?" I was like, oh. Although I'm on the side of sort of like, well, I get, it's not great you're going to go and die, but you still tried to kill a whole planet.
Yeah, I'm like, you absolutely deserve this.
Yeah.
There's no debate for me.
The Doctor killed all of your relatives. Why is he going to change his mind for you?
Yeah.
It was just one of...
I wish... I've been interested to see like Jack attempt to look her in the eye, but they never showed his attempt.
Well, I think it might be because he doesn't have that history there, does he?
He just smacks her with the extrapolator. I'm like, you looked away. You suck.
One line that I did have a bit of at is the dinner and bondage line.
Works for me.
I was like, that went right over my head as a child.
Yeah,
but when I watch it, I'm like, oh no.
Whenever I think of this episode, that's the line I think of. That and the decapitated line, because that's just my favorite joke in Doctor
Who. But yeah, I mean, she's great, definitely. My sort of third best bit, I guess, is Mickey. He finally stands up to Rose.
Yeah.
It makes me so happy when I see it every time, because we watched him in Rose when he was basically a cowering man that was like, no, I can't do this. He grows and grows throughout the series, from being blamed for Rose's disappearance to hacking into a nuclear whatever missile silo and blowing up the Slovene, to in this one finally sort of standing up to Rose and be like, look, every time you go, I wait for you to come back and I will drop everything I'm doing. And what annoys me about it is Rose gets annoyed at him for like seeing somebody else, and I'm like, I'm sorry, did you not just spend the past 2 episodes flirting with Jack?
I know.
Like,
I'll talk about the Mickey Rose stuff in my negative.
But I did appreciate that Mickey was sort of finally standing up, and we see it more in the finale because he helps Rose get back to the Doctor because he knows that's what she wants, and we see it even more in series 2 where he's a much better character. But this is the start of series 2 for Mickey, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's definitely And he fits in with the TARDIS team. You know, I wouldn't have mind him sticking with them and going off to Raxacrocopalapsaurus, but obviously he needed the time away from Rose, really, to sort of.
Yeah, because you can see the potential there. Like that scene where they're in the restaurant and Jack's telling the story, and he like finishes the line, and like the Doctor like grabs Mickey's arm and like laughs with him. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
that's really wholesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, you can see them maybe sowing some seeds for him, like joining in series 2.
Yeah, and it definitely makes sense because he's a great character. When he's not tied with Rose, he's a good character by himself.
Yeah.
But now that he's basically free from Rose, he has more room to grow as a companion, really. But that's sort of the end of my main best 3. What's your last one?
Yes. Just that the episode's quite funny was my positive. I just had a right laugh with it, especially because the last 2-part was pretty dark and heavy, and then Rose's dad's death before that, and then a gloom space station with the news lying to the people before that, and then the Dalek episode before that, and it being bad.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think the Dalek before that, and then we had the Sleeping before that. So I like them just having a chance to show some funny sides to these characters that we may not have seen before. It's nice just before the finale going dark again, and it's good to see Nine have some comical moments before he makes his exit. And yeah, it's just such a watchable episode for me. Like I said, like even years gone by, I've often like just put this episode on because I felt like it. And yeah, I think its placement in the series is really cool. Well done to kind of revisit previous elements of the series, like the Selene, the idea of the rift being brought back into it from Unquiet Dead, and foreshadowing the finale. You know, talk about the Doctor being a killer, and then he has to make the choice between being a killer and a coward again in the finale. And the heart of the TARDIS. It's kind of, you know, oh, that's convenient that happened in this episode, but it is kind of a setup for them using it in the finale, so you can kind of get away with it. So yeah, I think it's just a really funny episode, and it being that is perfectly placed in the series.
Yeah. I think this episode has sort of lasted so long and been good for so long because it doesn't rely heavily on CGI. Like, if you look at previous episodes, from whether it's Satellite 5 or the gas mask coming out of the face or the flowing Dalek, you know, it's always a bit dodgy CGI. Even the Slovene running is dodgy CGI, but there is very little use of CGI in this. And then there's very little use of alien in this. You know, we see the Slovene twice at the start of the episode, and that's it. And I think it's a very good character piece. I think this is a much better character piece than what Father's Day was. I think we see, well, because we sort of delve more into the Doctor in this, who I think is more of an interesting character than Rose. So it's good to see him sort of battle with his morality and what he does. And we even do get more sort of history with Rose. We get more of a study in Rose that although she's gone through this development of trying to be nicer to people, she can still be horrible to the people closest to her, which is something that she needs to still get past, which she does in sort of the finale. But I think this was a great character piece, a great intro into the show, a funny episode with great humor throughout it, even in like dark moments, like when they're at the dinner table and she's trying to kill him. You know, they're still quite funny, those moments when he literally stops every time she tries to kill him. I think it's very well done, very well written. But we will have to speak about some worsts. So what is your first?
While it's very funny, and I really love the dinner sequence, I think Margaret trying to kill the Doctor undermines the episode, trying to make it like a balanced argument on her end. You're like, oh, you know, should we spare her? Should we let her live? And clearly she really hasn't learned this lesson, even though the whole point of the scene is her trying to explain that to the Doctor. So I'm a bit like that. And the fact that even if she had convinced the Doctor, oh, you know, you can let me go, the extrapolator still would have caused that thing with the TARDIS, so it's all going to go wrong anyway. And she had a plan all along. So I feel like it's tough because some of it's just at the expense of comedy, and it does work in that sense. I do feel like the actual moral argument about what to do with Margaret isn't actually as solid as maybe the episode makes it out to be.
Yeah. I mean, like I said earlier, throughout the whole thing, I'm thinking, yeah, kill her. I'm like, sorry, I know that you don't want the Doctor, our hero, to kill people, but he's not doing it. He's just taking her to justice, which is, if anything, the whole point of a police officer, which is what his police box is based off of. Um, but I think from if we go from the point of she's evil all along, she is playing for time, I think, in that dinner sequence, which is why she tries to kill him first of all. Maybe she knows that he will stop her either way. And then that's why she keeps the conversation going. Because I reckon that if the Doctor was there in the TARDIS, that wouldn't have happened. But because Jack was left by himself with it, maybe he didn't see something the Doctor might have seen.
Yeah.
Which is how I would, because even she plants the seed of, hey, let's me and you go out and sort of leave them to it.
Yeah, it's definitely all part of her plan, but then just make us aware that it's all just part of her plan instead of like trying to pretend it's like this really emotional moment. It's the same with which is familiar with Doctor and Davros. He has some really lovely scenes, but Davros is just evil all along. It's part of his plan. I feel like that just cuts away something that could have been really interesting.
Yeah, but then it circles back to the fact that, well, they're the bad guys, and do we really want to set a precedent of the baddest bad guys going good? And they're like, no, not really, so we need to make them bad by the end anyway.
And it's the idea that she's like, oh, I really do want to start again, even though she has this plan all along. But then it turns out she actually does want that because she's like thanking the Doctor when the TARDIS gives her that second chance. It's just, I think it's a bit muddled. Exactly what the episode wants us to think she wants.
Yeah. Although, I mean, maybe I've watched the Doctor Who Confidential afterwards, and Russell Davies is like, the TARDIS, it theoretically looks into your mind and sees what you actually want. So maybe she did want to sort of, start again, and she just wasn't accepting it herself. But it took that moment when the TARDIS was sort of looking deep inside, and she went, "Oh yeah, maybe I do. Maybe I do want to stop killing people." But who knows?
Too little, too late, Margaret.
Oh, all of my worsts are basically nitpicks. My first one is the ADR.
Right.
The lines
Margaret.
Margaret is one of them. Leave the mayor alone is another
Leave the mayor
one.
alone.
and then it's like this is the worst day ever or something when they're
oh yeah, I had never noticed that line before until I watched it today. So I was like, is that Margaret?
Yeah, exactly. So there's
someday this turned out to be.
There's quite a few where I'm like, you don't need them. You don't need the character saying something because they run off, which is literally what happens in all the time. Why the secretary is trying to fight off the Doctor, I don't know. Like, you're not being paid enough for that. Don't bother.
He's just very loyal.
Yeah.
I mean, we'll find out in the inevitable novelization, I'm sure.
Yeah, clearly. He might be like a secret CIA agent or something.
He'll have something like that when he's going on, yeah.
But yeah, and then as soon as the Doctor gets away, he just gives up and goes back inside. All right then, mate. Yeah. Good. But yeah, and then is it the Doctor saying Margaret?
Yeah.
Right, I thought it was, but you can't tell. I couldn't tell if that was Chris Ferguson or not. It might not have been. They might have just got someone that sounds like him to do it. But yeah, those lines they always stick out to me. They're funny lines, and I can joke about them, and they add to the charm of the episode. But they're terrible lines. it's just because of how obvious they are more than anything. Yeah. Like I said, they're nitpicky worsts. So what's your next one?
It's a funny one. It's like, I like the Mickey and Rose stuff, but I feel like it just doesn't commit either way to what they want the development to be, because they basically end up in exactly the same position, but Rose is in Mickey's place, Mickey's in Rose's place. I feel like they just couldn't commit to like exactly, are you going to resolve this storyline here? Are you going to be saving it for the end of the season? Are you saving it for series 2? It just feels a bit like we're making this kind of arc up as we go along, because clearly we all know she's going to be sticking with the Doctor. She definitely prefers being with him than being with Mickey. And it just makes them both come across as bad. Like Rose, when she's like, she's a bit big. Like, fuck you.
I know.
And Mickey's like, well, I'm seeing someone else. Let's go to a hotel. You both look like awful people. I don't care about how this relationship goes because you're both terrible.
No, I know. I mean, part of me, I think this conversation needed to happen just for Mickey's sake more than anything. I think this is there's an episode in How I Met Your Mother where they explain that somebody's always on your hook. Like, you've always got somebody on your hook that you're leading along, and it's always a case of, oh yeah, someday we could get together. And I think this is that. Mickey is on Rose's hook, and this is him realizing that and getting off.
Yeah.
Even if in the finale, and I think in the Christmas Invasion, he's still kind of on there.
Yeah, and she kisses him in New Earth. Like Rose
yeah, but I think at that point he's still accepted that they're not a couple.
Yeah.
And then especially by Age of Steel, he's definitely realised, nah, it's definitely I'm off.
Yeah.
But only then, because he's found hang on a minute, I can just piss off here. That's perfect. I'm not going to see a fake Rose running around anywhere because she's a dog.
Yeah. First thing he does is run over that dog.
Yeah. Freedom.
Inner peace.
But yeah, I do agree that it's very much a stepping stone rather than a resolution to their relationship.
Yeah, maybe if they like properly talked about it in the finale, but they don't.
Yeah, he just sort of goes, all right.
Is that right? I'll help you. Oh, you really love him, don't you? Okay, I'll help you. Bye.
Yeah. But again, that is after him and Jackie have tried to convince her to stay, I guess. But I don't know. Yeah, I can see what you mean. My next nitpick, this is one of two quite small ones. And it only clocked for me since having a job as a journalist. How did they print that front page?
That's my next thing.
I'm like, I'm sorry.
I will agree. Like, they do sort out yet later, because at dinner, Margaret says that was the day before when she spared the thing and got the photo taken. But the way they execute that opening, it looks like the team head off, and then Margaret has that thing in her pitch taken, and it's just there in the restaurant. So it's just bad editing or whatever. Yeah.
So see, that sort of struck me. I was like, hang on a minute. If that was this morning, and then it's printed, but then it sort of threw me. And then I'll stick my third in here as well. When the picture's taken, she doesn't have her arm in her face. He takes a picture, then she puts it up.
Oh, damn it.
What?
It's a very slow camera. Okay.
Oh, I know, but I was like, it's like click, no pictures. I'm like, hang on a minute, it's already taken. And then why you wouldn't print that? You wouldn't print that. That's not what goes on the front page. It would be a picture of the power plant. It would not be her.
Yeah.
But for dramatic, I appreciate the reveal and the Doctor's realization.
Yeah, just stealing that man's newspaper.
Just takes the man's newspaper, and the man looks in disgust.
I was having such a nice day.
It's an amazing acting of.
I'm gonna kill him.
Yeah, but those are my two sort of nitpicks around that front page. But I mean, if it's explained and it was the day before, fine, I'll accept it. But I guess they didn't want to put the warning pre-credits and then go straight back to her in the briefing.
But they kind of needed to make the timeline make sense.
Yeah, but then
it does make sense, but they presented it badly.
Yes, yeah. I mean, if they do a novelization of it, then they'll probably swap it around, I would expect.
Yeah.
But it was, again, something that I'd never sort of really noticed before, but did on this time round, because I was sort of looking for bad things. I was like, oh, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
So what's your sort of next bit then?
It was my other thing. And then the last thing, the Doctor just shrugging off the coincidence with Bad Wolf. I felt obviously they just need to save it for the next few episodes, but he was all about coincidences with Jamie and everything happening with the gas mask in that last one. And he was like, oh, no coincidence. This must be linked somehow. I'm trying to work it out. This one is like, nah, just shrugs it off. I didn't quite buy it. Like, it happens too many times. And like, if you want us to believe that he just shrugged it off, don't point it out. Just do like the realization thing in the finale. But again, that's a tiny little thing.
Yeah, I've got one on that actually. Why doesn't the TARDIS translate the Welsh?
Good God. I don't know. All the signs should just be English in Wales.
Well, exactly. But, we had this conversation with Long Game, didn't we, about TARDIS translation and why can't it translate some things. I think they get more consistent with it as the series goes on. But I think the show has a problem with it's very fast and loose with, we need somebody to explain what it says rather than reading it. But they do a good job in series 5 when River like graffitis the cliffside and he comes out, reads it, and then we actually see it, the words.
Yeah.
Which is good. That's how things sort of should be done, I guess. But But yeah, that that threw me off. But on the dismissing bit, I think he's dismissed it because he doesn't want to get everyone distracted. In my head, at least, I think he's sort of seen it. He's like, right, I'll park that and I'll think about it in the background. At the minute, I want to keep everyone focused on this deadly alien Slovene that's about to blow up Cardiff.
Yeah, I can buy that.
But, and you know, it doesn't really mean much to Jack or Mickey or the Slovene. It just means it's sort of to Rose, who's heard it once.
Yeah, she's like, I've heard that lots and lots of times. Like, no, you haven't. It's been on posters behind you. You didn't see the Bad Wolf graffiti. You didn't hear the guy in Dalek go, Bad Wolf 1 descending.
Yeah, you didn't hear the helicopter. All you heard was Gwyneth, sorry.
Gwyneth, please.
Because I don't think it's mentioned in Rose, is it?
Yeah.
So.
I do want to know, like, why she chose it. She was just like, well, it's Welsh. Like, that's not an answer to why you chose it.
Yeah, I know. Well, like, who would think a good name for a power plant would be Bad Wolf anyway?
True.
It's not good.
You do not want the word bad anywhere near a nuclear power plant.
No, especially when people are already worried about it.
Yeah.
Did you have any other sort of worst points then?
No, that's everything. It's just, nitpicky stuff for the most part.
Fair enough. So I've got some sort of additional bits, I guess. I know, right? A lot of the quotes in this I remember a lot of. When I was younger, I used to watch a lot of, like, videos on YouTube of being like, oh, here's a great trailer and a good whatever. And a lot of the lines from the Ninth and the Margaret's confrontation are sort of in those. So they've always stuck with me for a while. Also, at the same time, Rose is so naive that London would care about Cardiff. And I like that interaction where Margaret's like, don't be stupid. We're in Cardiff. London doesn't care. And I like that. I like that it's because Doctor Who often gets stick for always being in London. And I like that this shows sort of that London isn't the centre of the world, that things do happen and can happen elsewhere, which we get much more of in Moffat and Chibnall's eras.
Yeah.
Also, I like the fact that it plays into the sort of very real fear of nuclear power plants. Even now, that's still around. People are still sort of not sure about if it's safe or not.
Yeah.
So I like that it's sort of, rather than it being an extraterrestrial fear, it's very much a real fear that's sort of fueling the investigation into the plant, which exposes Margaret.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of it for me. I enjoyed that they had all the old phones and they had to do speed dials and stuff. That dates it slightly.
Yeah.
But especially because, like, Captain Jack's from, like, the 51st century and he's got like a Nokia brick. I'm like,
yeah,
you don't need that. You've got your vortex manipulator.
Yeah.
Just use that.
Yeah. The ultimate nitpick for me is the Next Time trailer. Why'd they put the Daleks at the end?
I know, right? I was thinking that, and I was getting there, and I was like, "This is a good trailer." And then I went, "Oh, my master's feared the Doctor." I was like, "Leave it there. Don't leave it there."
I didn't remember them putting the Daleks in it.
No, I don't know whether it's maybe because I watched it on my Steelbook, on my Blu-ray. So I don't know whether they added it in after the episode aired. Maybe
I watched it on iPlayer, so I don't know.
Maybe you could argue that if they're watching it on Blu-ray, they'll have seen it before, or if they're watching it. Basically, if you're watching a thing from 2005, you've probably seen it before, or you know what's going to happen.
Don't know.
Maybe.
But I'll probably have to maybe find it, my Series 1 box set or something. From way back when. I
can't remember that. But yeah, like even show the ships on the screen, maybe.
Yeah.
Because that's fine. But yeah,
they can get away with that.
When they get full out with the Daleks, and the Daleks aren't even really in the next episode.
Yeah, that's literally like from the last minute of the episode.
But then maybe they don't have the confidence in this episode to keep people hooked.
Maybe.
Because this is like the dip before the big two-parter, which at the time they really, really hyped up. So did you have any did you get any fun facts for this week?
You're goddamn right I did. Got plenty.
Nice.
Let's start with some title fun facts. So originally this was called Dining with Monsters, which I love. But Boomtown's also very good. The French title of this episode is The Cardiff Explosion.
Oh.
Make of that what you will. The Japanese title is The Sorrowful Slovene.
Oh, that's a nice one. I like that one.
Yeah. And then we talked about this last week, but the original idea for this episode, before the right had to drop out, was the Doctor making Rose the perfect companion. He'd been manipulating her all that time. Prior to this episode, when they released the synopsis, it was like the Doctor encounters someone he thought was long dead, and everyone hyped up that the Master was coming back in this episode. Imagine their surprise when Margaret Stelline showed up. So that was hilarious. And they had to extend the shoot during the Rose and Mickey scenes in front of the water tower for an extra day because the temperature wasn't right. So the tower hadn't automatically turned off. So it was too loud to shoot the scene, which is hilarious. And yeah, another fun thing, if you think about the lore and stuff, Captain Jack is in Cardiff in 3 separate occasions at the same time in this episode. So he's around in current day with them. He's around with Tortured 3 at the time, trying to get them to not get involved with that because it crosses timeline. And an even older version of him is frozen in the Torchwood base from the series 2 finale of Torchwood.
And that's the only ones we know about.
Yeah.
So who knows how many there are?
That man's everywhere.
On the original idea for this story, and we mentioned it last week, I would have absolutely hated that. I don't think that
I'm glad they didn't do it. Yeah. I'm glad it didn't work out that way.
I think we see a little bit of that when 9 is sort of watching Rose and Mickey walk away from the TARDIS. Because even Jack comes up going, "Oh, anything good on?" And he's like, "No, nothing." I think we see a bit, we see a bit of that story carried into this one, which I sort of liked, knowing that's what the original idea was. I think that's definitely where it came from. And you could have that episode, but I just don't think it would work for the character. Like, it might make sense if we had a standalone episode told completely from a companion's point of view, where they think they're meeting the Doctor, but it turns out it's the Master, and then the Doctor comes in at the end, maybe. That could be a cool premise for that, but I don't think it would have worked, no matter who the Doctor was, to be fair. Even if it's a classic
they were actually going to do this in Classic Who with the Doctor and Ace. He was slowly manipulating her, and she was ultimately going to become a Time Lord. That was kind of their end game, but ultimately got cancelled. Yes. So it's not like a new idea for them to have done that episode, but I'm glad it never worked out.
Yeah, I think there's definitely potential there for a story, but I don't like the idea that it was...
Would be really interesting, but I don't think it's very Doctor-ish, is it?
No, definitely not. All right, we'll move on to ratings. What will you give this episode?
I'm going to give it an 8.5.
Ooh.
I was tempted to give it a 9, but I was like, I do prefer The Empty Child, and I do prefer Father's Day. So, yeah, it was tough, because it is bloody good, but just like some of the undermining of like the key arguments and stuff for me, I was like, I have to bring it down. But it's not... How do I phrase this? I don't think it's like the best episode of Series 1 for me in terms of ratings and stuff, but I do think it's easily the most watchable and the most fun you can have with an episode in Series 1, is what I will say.
Yeah, fair enough. I'm going to give it a 9.5.
Ooh, I was expecting as such.
I was very close to putting it as a 10, and I wrestled with it all day. I was like, is it a 10 or a 9.5? But in my view, as much as I love this episode, we've never had a perfect episode of Doctor Who. Well, I don't think the perfect episode of Doctor Who exists. And I don't think it ever will exist, because it has to do too many things. And although this episode is perfect to me, there are still issues that I have with it that annoy me, essentially. Yeah. So it's not perfect enough, if that's a thing. But I definitely think it's my favorite episode of the series. We'll see when we move forwards with every other series how high other episodes rank.
Yeah.
And especially how high the next 2 rank. But ultimately, this is definitely top of my list at the moment.
That's easily the highest score you've given anything.
Yeah, I know. Almost a 10. But like I said, and it's the same with films. You can never have a perfect movie. You can never have a perfect TV episode of anything, really. So yeah, 9.5. If you ask me what could make it better, not those ADR lines. Maybe a little bit longer. Maybe more time with the TARDIS team.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe more sort of idea around Margaret, her not being as ambiguous, I guess. Although it helps.
Yeah.
But yes.
It's a jolly good one. I think that's one of the best performing ones probably from both of us.
Oh, definitely.
That's pretty high for both our scores. There's normally like 1 or 2 whole points difference between us, but it's only 1 point different.
Oh, nice. So next week we are moving on to the finale. It is Bad Wolf, isn't it? That's what it's titled.
Yeah.
And it's the start of the series finale. It's Chris Eccleston's penultimate episode. It's Captain Jack's penultimate episode for the moment, for at least
for a couple of years.
And effectively, the TARDIS team gets stuck on a space station that actually makes them play early 2000s TV shows, all of which no longer exist on TV. So this one might be
at least in the UK.
Yes, I guess. So these might be slightly more dated than this episode was, purely because
I already know that's going to be one of my negatives. How dated this is.
But I mean, like, I remember liking the game shows, and I remember liking the format they use in this. So I don't, it's not really if I was coming into this fresh, having never seen those original game shows or original shows, I definitely would think this is ridiculous. Why are they referencing some ancient show? But that was peak of TV.
I've never been like big on the game show elements anyway. I've always felt like it's a bit too much like real life, but it's a very Russell T Davies idea.
Yeah, definitely.
And they do good stuff with it.
Yeah, and again, we get more of this sort of same TARDIS team, bar Mickey, pretty much throughout this next two episodes. And I, as far as I can remember, I enjoy both of them. I think the second half is definitely more enjoyable than the first.
Yeah. So
the next 2 weeks should be interesting.
Indeed.
And then we're on to David Tennant. Then we'll have watched a whole Doctor.
Good.
Because he's never going to come back. We're never going to have to rewatch him again. Not even for a cameo, unless you count a scene taken from the series 1 series finale in Day of the Doctor.
In Day of the Doctor. Yeah.
I mean, we could read the books, and I would encourage people, if they want more Christopher Eccleston, definitely read some of the books, listen to his new Big Finish that's coming out, and even read the comics, because there's loads of good Doctor Who stories that aren't on the TV. Obviously, there's much more misses than hits when it comes to books, but it's because you have more free reign, really, to sort of try out weird ideas because there's no budget. But yeah, that's it sort of this week. If you enjoyed it, if you made it to the end, by all means subscribe, give it a like or a dislike. Where does this episode rank for you? Do you enjoy it as much as both of us? Do you absolutely hate it? Is it so boring that you skip it? It could be, because for some people they might not like the lack of action. It might be too slow, which is fair enough. Everyone has different tastes. And we'll sort of be back next week. If you want more Liam, he'll be on his own channel, which I will link below, where he's still doing... He's still on Buffy, or have you finished that now?
I finish it in a week.
There you go. So if you want, you've got a week to watch all of his Buffy reactions.
You've got a week to watch 141 reactions, so good luck with that.
It's perfect. Exactly. We're still in lockdown, so you've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
And I believe we've just started Falcon and Winter Soldier over on Liam's channel as well, so that'll be the next 5 weeks for that.
Yep.
So if you want more, by all means. Hopefully, we're planning some more sort of Doctor Who related videos in the future, where they'll appear. Who knows at this point? We'll be sure. You'll find out. Who knows? Not yet.
No, in about 3 years.
Yeah. But you'll know them when you see them. It'll be one of us either way. But yeah, I guess that's sort of it. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.
The Lord Mayor says thank you for popping by. She'd love to have a chat, but she's up to her eyes in paperwork. Perhaps if we could make an appointment for next week.
She's climbing out the window, isn't she?
Yes, she is.